That was good.
And now back to the Big Dumb Fun Show.
You're listening to the Big Dumb Fun Show. We are live Mondays, 7 to 10 p.m. Central Standard Time. The rest of the week, come on over to BigDumbFunShow.com. You can watch this episode. It's in replay all week long.
On the phone right now with our buddy, our pal, Elliott Threatt. He's online, etcomedy.com. Recently joined Aaron Gnurk last week. In fact, 1 week to this day, they were at the Missouri Senate, the inauguration ball, and living it up, just totally wiping out the buffet. And now joins us because Elliott, we talked a little politics, but actually has a tie to Martin Luther King Jr. He would stop by his house and they would just have tea and crumpets. Or what's the story, Elliott?
Collard greens.
My father was associates with him. I wouldn't say we were friends, but associates. And back then, he actually came to our house there, and was very, very young at the time. And to be completely honest with you, did not know who he was until after he got shot as an afterthought, because my father was kind of in charge of the civil rights department for Newark, New Jersey, and New York City at the time. Had a lot of folks come around our house, and every once in a while they said some people were really, really important, but I was just 5 or 6, so they were just another outstretched hand. But it's later that I found out who it was, which was kind of neat, because he happened to die about a week and a half after we met him, so that was kind of neat.
Yeah, I mean, and I've heard the story before, and I just think that is so neat. Now, granted, you were a young kid at the time, and like I said, you didn't realize that that was him. But I think just with any sort of a political figure or even a celebrity, I think the stories of somebody working with him or having a conversation and not knowing exactly who they are is just so it's just so amazing that he came over for pie.
It's not that different, and it's not that different than anything else. I mean, you meet a lot of people. Both of you guys meet a lot of interesting people, and you think, well, that person's intriguing, right? That person's smart. He's got something else. And that person later becomes famous. It happens a lot in show business, where you meet a couple comedians, and say the guy sticks out, and lo and behold, he's got a TV series. Lo and behold, he's Bill Hicks, in my case, or Sam Kinison, or any of these other folks.
Dennis Miller.
Yeah, I discovered Robin Williams.
You did?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
Well, but when you were that age, your father, tell us what your father's position was there in Newark, New Jersey.
He was actually director of human rights. The city had put him in charge of that, but I mean, he had a really scary job, because his job pretty much then was just when there was a lot of to kind of coordinate and stop folks from rioting, and when it hit the fan, he had to go right in the middle of it with a bullhorn and some cojones and kind of diffuse the situation there. So it's a fine line between being one of them and one of us. And that's the kind of line he had to walk there, But
he was like one of the first.
The whole fact.
One of the first city officials there in Newark, New Jersey, who was African American.
First one, yeah, first black official in that state, in its history. As a matter of fact, now I think about it.
And actually, Martin Luther King Jr., not the first, I won't say celebrity, but civil rights activist or African American of distinguished.
My dad used to hang with Langston Hughes and Jackie Robinson and all those folks. I mean, he was, was kind of a smaller clique back then, but he definitely was associated with all those folks there. And he was we went to Tuskegee and was a, war hero and all that sort of stuff. So all that so I could one day be telling jokes in a yogurt shop, and leave some of it 40 years later. But hey, that's another.
I think one of the interesting things, Elliott, I don't know if you've ever told this story on the air, was the fact, this was all going on during the civil rights movement, living in Newark, New Jersey. There you were, your family, not from Kansas City, but
correct.
You end up in Kansas City, and why was that?
Oh, I didn't tell you that because they put some bombs in our house. They threatened to blow us up, and National Guard came, and we stayed at my aunt's house in Philadelphia. And then my dad just said we got to go, because this is right around when it all was hitting, and it was a very real possibility. Although Martin Luther King got shot and killed, but there was dozens of other folks They were in that movement that got killed that had less notoriety, so there's no streets named after them or holidays, but it was a very real possibility, you know. And
here, your father's the
there was
first.
a certain kind of, you know, the dam's broken now, so let's just go ahead and take out a lot of these other characters we don't like. And that was kind of the impetus. That was about maybe a month and a half after he got shot that happened. And we didn't go back. We left. My dad stayed there. I don't know why, but we all left. I still remember the National Guard came, and we just all kind of got the hell out of there. And they, I guess, searched around the house. We were gone at that time, but after that, my dad just wanted to kind of get out of that space. I guess
he stayed behind to give a 2-week notice.
Yeah,
there's a bomb in the window. Somebody put a bomb in our house, and let me give you. My family's not here, but I'm going to give you my 2-week notice.
Exactly. Just let you know I'm out of here. You know, because back then, you know, I mean, there was a different kind of racism. I mean, there was a southern kind of racism, but you know, have you ever seen Do the Right Thing? There was this certain Northeast kind of prevalent racism as well, so it's not to say that it didn't exist, you know.
Well, it wasn't like, I mean, you didn't move to Kansas City, Kansas, which was, of course, Kansas being a free state, Missouri being still part of the South.
When we moved to Kansas City, the house we originally, the house that you remember, I grew up in there, and they didn't want to sell us that house. They didn't want to sell us that house, and my dad, it's funny story there, the house was at 63rd and State Line, and didn't want to sell it, even though my dad's coming there to be one of the people that run the city. They did not want to sell a house to the black guy, so my dad hired his white lawyer, a guy named Jim Bowers, to buy the house. And they sell it to him, and he says, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to give it to my friend here." Pow! Gotcha. So
and you've
that's how we got into that neighborhood.
You've been taking property values down ever since that day.
Ever since. And the ironic thing is we probably did drag the property values way down there. Joke's on them twice.
Yeah, and then the joke was on you. You turned around and invested in some real estate in Midtown.
Exactly.
And you're like,
they never did
pan out for you.
Elliott, we only have about a minute left, but what do you think about Dr. King's family taking the rights to his speech and selling them off? Like, we can't air any of the speech because we'd have to pay like royalty rights as if it were a regular song, a signed song. You think that's right or no?
You know, that is a good question. I did not know about that. So I mean, it's so much part of the public zeitgeist, and you know, if they can't get a job and have a fruitful life with, oh, by the way, my dad's birthday is a holiday, I can't help you right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that isn't enough for them to get set, you know, I mean, that's just kind of bad. But, you know, it's like repeat and everything else is going, you know, you can't hate the player, hate the game. But you know what? You know, I think it's public domain, you know, I think anyway.
Yeah.
Unless maybe, you know, but then again, you know, Martin Luther King is so much in the whole lexicon of our society. There, you know, you people get pensions and then Social Security for relatives that died. What does King's family get?
Elliott, thank you very much for joining us tonight on the Big Dumb Fun Show. ETComedy.com. You can pull him up. Elliott Threatt, thank you very much for joining us once again.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Elliott. And people like Elliott, his father has a street in Kansas City named after him, the James I. Threatt Street.
Ooh.